In 1932, he tried to get more determined to impact his communist ideas and industrialize the Soviet Union. And this time he was successful. They came into a much more decisive plan, and as a result, over 10 million peasants died as a result of famine from Stalin's collectivization of the farm system. And so this is where Stalin's policies first meet question from inside his own government. This started with a group of men led by Ryatin, and they authored the Ryatin Platform, which is a 200-page document that criticized Stalin directly and his policies and actually called for his removal from power. And so, like he did earlier in his career, he just expelled them and exiled them through clever political maneuvering. He still had the support that he needed to pull strings and get these men out of office. But in 1934, a man by the name of Kirov rises to be one of Stalin's top advisors, and he has a lot of political and popular support, which Stalin had lacked because the conditions in his industrialist Russia, or Soviet Union, were terrible. Many people were living terrible lives, the work was awful, and so while he had a stronghold in his government, his popular support was waning very strongly. And so right now Stalin sees perhaps the greatest threat ever to his power, the man by Kirov, and because of his popular support, he's unable to just oust him politically and through exile like he has with Trotsky and the Ryatin men. And so he plans the assassination of Kirov, and this kicks off one of the darkest periods of the world, I think. And this is Stalin's purges, in which over 20 million people die as a direct result of Stalin's actions. So let's look back at who Stalin was and perhaps glean some information about why he did this. So he was born in Georgia, but there's little to no conclusive evidence on his childhood. And really the first time that we see anything that we can verify is when he joined the Bolshevik Party and rose through the ranks. He was quite determined and got things done. He actually earned favor with Lenin. However, towards the very end of Lenin's life, Lenin turns against him, and because he was a, quote, unpleasant man, he decided he did not like the way that Stalin was doing things. But it was too late for Lenin to do much to stop Stalin's rise to power. He was also an extreme idealist, believed in communism wholeheartedly, and especially the collectivist system. And this is why we see that he knowingly sentenced over 10 million people to die just so that he could collectivize the farm system. He was also driven by a quest for absolute and unchallenged power. He was a very vain and paranoid man. So here's some quotes, some directly by Stalin and by some Stalin's closest advisors that may shed a little more light on who he was as a character. To choose one's victims, to prepare one's plans minutely, to shake an implacable vengeance, and then go to bed. There is nothing sweeter in the world. That was a direct quote from Stalin. It was a test of our strength and their endurance. It took a famine to show them who was master leader. It has cost millions of lives, but the collective farm system is here to stay. We have won the war. Finally, Stalin was a very distrustful man, sickly suspicious. We knew this from our work with him. He could look at a man and say, "Why are your eyes so shifty today?" Or "Why are you turning so much today?" and avoiding looking at me directly in the eyes. The sickly suspicion created in him a general distrust, even towards eminent party workers whom he had known for years. Everywhere and in everything he saw enemies, double dealers, and spies. So like I said previously, we did not know much about what actually happened and who was culpable in all these deaths until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. With that came a flood of information and documents that showed that Stalin's hand was implicit in these atrocities, that many times he was the author of these plans and was the one who was signing off on these orders of execution to kill these men or to send these groups of people to work camps. And so, unlike before 1991, there was many thoughts that it was Stalin's secret police who carried out his orders, as Stalin would say, take care of these people, and so it was the head of the secret police who committed these mass atrocities without Stalin being implicit in the crime. But now we know that Stalin was the driving force behind all of these atrocities. From 1929 to 1933, he waged a war on the peasants. This was driven by his ideologies and successes to be achieved at any cost, and that cost was 10 million people. Sacrificing 10 million people for an ideology that sounds a lot like Hitler's Holocaust. Even worse, 10 million versus 6 million. Slide. And his purges, probably the most infamous of his crimes committed during his reign. This was driven by his obsessive desire for absolute power and by his paranoia. He started off by killing Kirov. This was sort of the domino that tipped off the rest. And he did it only because he was in the way and he couldn't think of any better way to deal with it. Then he used the conspiracy surrounding the killing of Kirov to wage war on his enemies and purge everyone. And his paranoia, it built upon itself. And the more people he killed and eliminated, the more potential enemies he saw. At the end, 20 million people, an estimated 20 million people. Obviously the numbers are tough to come by, but the leading historian of that time says 20 million ended up dead through false trials, work camps, and just mass executions. And so I think a historian says it better than I ever could on Stalin's legacy in the Soviet Union. All in all, Stalin was a monster who, while adhering to abstract, absolute, fundamentally utopian ideas, in practice had no criterion but success, and this meant violence and physical and spiritual extermination. And all in all, 30 million people died as a direct result of Stalin's actions.
Cool. Stalin. How's that, how's our resident expert?
Yeah.
How'd he do?
Well, it was good.
What's the popular, this reconciliation that he talked about with the good and the bad? How do people, like, how does your country talk and feel about Stalin?
It's like the same. Like everyone hates him pretty much, but like everyone acknowledges that like he won the war too. Like, and some people justify it saying by you needed that kind of rule to defeat the Nazis, to keep the empire going.
Right.
Mainly the idea is that he was a monster and that he did it.
Yeah, you know, as soon as you start, you know, to call someone a monster is almost to dismiss the acts, right? The acts themselves. As soon as you say, oh, he's the monster. Well, no, and that's what I think Spencer did a really good job of. Just a very committed idealist, you know, and a paranoid idealist. But it's why, you know, it's why a lot of people, I think it's been proven that Hitler had syphilis, or at least was suffering from some sort of mental illness. But a lot of people try to reject even diagnosing him with any sort of mental illness, because that, as soon as you do that, it says, oh, you can just blame it off. Well, that's why he did what he did. He was crazy. And then it just changes the fact that now this is a human being who used very clear ethics and rules to get himself to this justifying place. And Stalin, too. I remember, I didn't even learn about the purges until I was probably in college. It wasn't even a thing growing up. It was massive. I mean, numbers, what does he say? One death is a tragedy, a million is statistic.
I thought it was 500 statistic.
Yeah, my numbers are off, huh? Yeah, good, Spencer. What about Spencer's delivery techniques? He's another one of the. You're another one of the crew that I would say has developed a really good persona speaking. Does he have any nervous tics? I'll ask you. Do you have any nervous tics?
I go like this, right?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you got it. I mean, stick with it. What about when you're trying to find your words? What do you tend to do? Talk to the floor. Yeah, you look down, and it's just when I think it's when you get deeper into thought, that's when you kind of gather yourself. So yeah, I'm okay with it too. It's not distracting. That's the problem. Just as long as you're aware of it, that you have a distracting thing. First period had a speech where he used the podium, and he never stepped out from behind it. He was fine, except every about 30 seconds, he would kind of step back away from it, take his hands off, and then he'd kick it. He'd kick the bottom of it. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I had never seen him do that before. He was totally, I think it was a preparation thing, but that was his nervous tick. Sometimes we don't even have developed nervous ticks till in the moment. Yeah. Cool. I like that presentation quite a lot. The slides, how'd they work?
Pictures.
Yeah, I wanted more pictures too. I wanted more pictures too. I don't know why. I like pictures.
Yeah, me too.
You could have really driven home that you did a good job modulating your voice to drive home your main points. The 30 million, you said that a lot, which is I like the repetition in that. When you said it, that drove home the atrocity alone. I don't even know where you would started with pictures. Are there still?
I
Are there?
always went over time.
Yeah.
Just trying to lay out the story. I
Yeah.
guess I'm a more detail kind of guy, so to me that's like versus maybe more of like pictures showing
Yeah.
the atrocities. It's
Yeah.
just a personal thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'll buy it.
I don't know if you have to explain all this.
Yeah, I like Chris's technique with the background wallpaper thing. All right, let's see what Hunter Body does. Just a second. Everybody ready? Go!
I'm going to talk about mindset of maintaining honor. Slide, please. The person I studied was James E. Stockdale. He was a pretty crazy dude, and I'll go into that in a second. He was a naval aviator, philosopher, and received the Medal of Honor for his conduct as a POW. His story starts in Vietnam when he got shot down by enemy forces and was captured. Eventually, he was taken to Hanoi Hilton, where there he was the senior-most officer. He then conducted all efforts and resistances against Vietnamese captors. Their purpose was to take any military information and use POWs for propaganda purposes. At one point, he was taken to be cleaned up and used for propaganda purpose. And we will start from the video, Spencer, please, on his actions. Right, here, just hit refresh. And just go to that.
And so I found a stool that was heavier than the chair. So I just started bashing my face, my cheekbone with that stool. And that's why the doors are open, because they want to know what the hell was going on in there, because they could hear the swat, 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 swat. Well, anyway, I kept that up. And when they came back in again, there was no question about it. My eyes were swollen shut. They went away, and that was the end of that. I lay down and I cried that night, right on that floor. I was so happy that I had the guts to get it all together and make it impossible for them to do what they were going to try to do. And I think ever since that Buddy episode, I think I had the feeling that I was under a suicide watch. I think every night the guard would come about every 2 hours, just look and make sure I was, because the light's on all night yourself. Oh yes. And so I knew the footsteps, and I said, he'll be back in about 2 hours. Now here's what I got to do. I've got to do something that will change the status quo. This is the only room in the prison where there's an internal light switch that I can get at. I know where it is. It's the only room in the prison with plate glass windows, and they're protected behind a heavy curtain. So when he left, I got up, went over, turned out the light, moved the curtain. Not making a big thing. I don't think anybody was in the courtyard. Everybody was in mourning. But I took the big shards, sat sat down in the chair and just started whack, 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 whack. I'm not knowing exactly, is this the right thing? I was asking myself, is this the right thing? I don't know. And I'm doing this, and then finally I passed out and fell face down.
Stop the video, please.
Next morning, early,
So after this incident, pretty much all torture on POWs stopped. They were treated fairly until the end of the war, and they were released. But it's really weird how much the great lengths Stockdale went to inflict harm upon himself just to deny, because that means what he wanted. What led him to do this? He had to have a certain foundation and reason behind it. One thing he realized was there was things he could and could not control while he was in prison. Two things Vietnamese captors had control over him were the torture and isolation he put POWs under. This caused great mental stress and physical pain. However, Stockdale realized what he could control was to follow the duty and brotherhood that was expected of him as a soldier. It's the one thing he could control. And this led, he took it to extreme lengths. And we'll get into a second with that, with his reasoning. Next slide, please. Stockdale loved philosophy, really loved it. He was an avid follower of Stoicism. And this dedication to the philosophy led him to take these extreme actions. If you don't know what Stoicism is, it's the endurance of pain and suffering in the absence of emotion, pretty much. And from it, he took the linchpin. One of the linchpins was a man can falter not under the pain he experiences, but the shame. And he took that to heart, and he saw it with many POWs. Because when they went home, they could not face their loved ones and friends for what they had done, what they did. And so Stockdale pretty much, from I guess these reactionary soldiers, took that honesty and responsibility for your actions during wartime efforts were key. And it goes back to that saying in the foundation that you are in charge of you. He once said, it is in neither death, nor exile, nor toil, or any such thing that is the cause of your doing or not doing anything. It is your opinions and decisions of your will. And this hits hard. It hits hard because will you do the same thing in that experience? Will you be able to gain the fruit of your doctrines in order to gain the tranquility, fearlessness, and freedom that Stockdale felt in that moment? Any questions?
What did he fly? F4?
Yeah, I think F4s. No, not F4s. He was Naval, so yeah. I don't know off the top of my head. F4s?
Ad- Oh, I thought he was an admiral.
He retired as an admiral.
Oh, yeah. What, during captivity he wasn't an admiral?
I don't think so.
I like that quote. Did you watch the whole interview with him?
Yeah, I